Hello and welcome into Loftside Banter. On today's show, we're going to take a look at the NFL Week 10 review. We're going to go over some of the scores and stuff. Again, I won't go as deep as I had been. We'll talk about some news that had come out of those games and everything else like that. We're then going to take a look at the NFL hot seat. We're going to take a look at each team and see if maybe there's going to be a coaching change or something like that, and kind of break down where we are after 10. We'll look at some Major League Baseball news. We'll go into a few things with the NBA. There was firing today that I'm sure a lot of fans in the Dallas area are actually very excited about. So we'll do all that today. We'll start with Week 10 in the NFL, as I said, and go over some of the games. Some of the bigger games early on, we had the Patriots and the Bucks. This was kind of one of those, again, litmus test type games to see where the Patriots kind of were. Obviously, easy schedule. So putting them up against the 6-2, I believe it was the 6-2 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Obviously, looks like a playoff team right now. They've had some close games, had to win some in the last 2 minutes early on in the season, but have looked pretty good, especially for all the injuries on the offensive side of the football. But the Patriots come out with a 28-23 win. It was not as close as that final score kind of shows. The defense for the Patriots played really well. Drake May still in the forefront and still kind of favored to win the MVP right now. And now with another big loss by the Buffalo Bills, 30-13 to the Dolphins, you have a 2-game lead plus the tiebreak. So you essentially have a 3-game lead in the AFC East. Now, I'm going to play that kind of reserve role. I've spoken to some people that were all for it, definitely didn't like that the Patriots didn't make a move at the deadline. Now with this win, you kind of look at that and you say, maybe they should have actually done that. Because you're in that prime position. You're tied for the best record in the AFC. You're actually a 3-way tie. I believe you're in third. I believe they're in third place. I'm going to take a look real quick while we kind of go over this. As far as the conference is concerned, yeah, they're in third place based upon some other things. It looks like conference record and points for and stuff like that. You have a plus 73 point differential. You went into Tampa. You started slow. You eventually took over the game. You had finally a running game that was excellent in this game, which was not something I was expecting with Stevenson out against a very tough front for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But a huge 28-23 win against a team that most people had chalked up to a loss, including myself. I chalked this one up to probably losing just because we hadn't seen them really do that well against some of the top tier defenses. They played close games, but this is what you wanted to see from them. The New England Patriots going on the road, beating a team on the road like that. They're 5-0 on the road, which is scary. But Drake May, a few mistakes in there. That first drive, he didn't look great, overthrew the ball a few times. Now, I've heard people talk about the weather and everything else like that. A couple of overthrows, things like that. He took quite a few shots still in this game. And then the interception in the end zone. We're seeing that, and it's not often, but we see it every once in a while. And against those good teams, they're going to make you pay. And I'm not saying Tampa Bay is not a good team because they didn't make them pay. But in a playoff scenario, those are the times you need those points. I think it's gutsy moves by Mike Vrabel and this coaching staff to essentially have him just dive on the ground to waste time in the first half and then go for it on 4th and goal with 4 or 5 seconds left to score a touchdown. So everything is working out their way. We're going to see a game where things don't work out their way. That I know is going to come up. So the Patriots are in great shape. They've won 7 in a row. 2 games up, essentially 3 games up on the Buffalo Bills. We'll get to that game a little bit as well. The Thursday night game was Denver 10-7 over the Raiders. Boring game to watch. Trust me. Boring game to watch. Denver gets the win. The Raiders and Geno Smith, I think they need that's got to be over. But 10-7. Bo Nix hasn't looked great again from what we saw last year. And I said he was kind of in a sophomore slump early in the year, then kind of said, well, maybe not. Maybe he's coming around. I think he's just inconsistent. at this point. How many more games of a great game to a bad game, great game, bad game, or okay game, or whatever? I think he's just inconsistent. The game over in Germany last Sunday morning was the Indianapolis Colts winning in overtime 31-25. Looking at that box score and having looked at that game, watched that game, Jonathan Taylor, 32 carries, 244 yards, over 7.5 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns. He's on pace for close to 2,000 yards and about 30 touchdowns. Those are MVP numbers. Absolute MVP numbers. I'm not saying that I think it's normally a quarterback winning the MVP. I mean, it happens just about every year. There's very few players that kind of anoint themselves MVP over a quarterback when you don't play that position. Jonathan Taylor's in the conversation. Daniel Jones, okay game, 255 yards, should throw an interception. I think he lost 3 fumbles. No, he had 3 fumbles. There was 4 total fumbles, and they recovered 3 of them. So Jonathan Taylor did fumble in this game, so not to gloss over, a negative for him. But, I mean, out of the grand scheme of things, they win in overtime 31-25. The Falcons hung in there again, but they're 3-6. The Jets 27-20 over the Cleveland Browns. Justin Fields, again, 6 of 11, 54 yards. I mean, it's not. I'm now probably putting Justin Fields out the pasture. Even at 26, he's just not moving an offense. The fact that they scored 27 points with those types of numbers. I mean, Breece Hall had 83 yards, no touchdowns for him. He did have 1 42-yard reception for a touchdown. Dylan Gabriel, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Again, not throwing the ball overly deep and stuff like that. 167 yards on 17 of 32 passing. But, I mean, no mistakes there. They're just not scoring enough. So, next, the other game, this game was wild because Jacksonville was up, I think, 26-0 at one point. And then the Houston Texans scored 26 points in the fourth quarter alone to win 36-29. Davis Mills played well against a defense that's not terrible, but 292 yards, 2 touchdowns, to throw an interception. Woody Marks is the guy that's getting most of the carries in the backfield. He scored a touchdown. Trevor Lawrence, 158 yards on 13 of 23. He's in the category now of bust. I didn't want to call him that, but he's just not been a number 1 overall pick pretty much at any point in his career. So, I mean, Jacksonville 5-4, the Houston Texans 4-5. The Texans are not out of the division conversation with or they're not out of the conversation of overtaking Jacksonville by any means. They're a game back. That Buffalo game, Josh Allen, pretty good numbers. He did throw an interception, 306 yards, but they just couldn't score. James Cook, I think, fumble once. They both, Josh Allen also did fumble. Devon Achane, 174 yards for the Dolphins, but 2 interceptions. I mean, Buffalo's in rough shape these last few games. They haven't been able to really put their foot down against people and really kind of get past. I mean, they beat the Chiefs last week, and then you come out, you put up a stinker on the road against Miami. Talk about inconsistencies. I mean, this is where we're at. They're 6-3. Again, 2 games back in the win-loss column, but the tie break also, at this point in time, goes to the Patriots. I think Buffalo is going to take a long, hard look at this team, especially if they don't go deep into a playoff run. They still obviously can, but we'll get into that with the hot seat coming up. The New York Giants made headlines on Monday by firing Brian Dabolls, their head coach, which I think is a mistake, and we'll get into that in the coach's hot seat of that. But after that, I mean, you had Jackson Dart played fairly well, had a concussion, or looks like a concussion, and is now probably out for a little while. They may sit him, and it may be the best thing for him to do because of the firing of the coach. I thought Brian Dabolls and Jackson Dart had something going. You just need to give it time. And there's no love lost as being a head coach anywhere, manager, whatever the case may be. But they lose 24-20 to the Bears. Bears are 6-3. Caleb Williams, 20 of 36, 220 yards. Again, not mind-blowing numbers, but touchdown, no interceptions. The offense put up some points. Rome Odunze got catches, so his father doesn't have to tweet anymore. Bears are looking all right. Again, I don't think they're division winners, but they're looking all right. The Ravens 27-19 over the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota Vikings fall to 4-5, and the Baltimore Ravens improved to 4-5. With Lamar Jackson coming back, they've looked a little bit better. Gives them some dynamic on that offense. Obviously, they didn't have with their backups in. The defenses looked better. So the Baltimore Ravens are a team that no team wants to play. When they come and they play the Patriots or whenever the Patriots play them, it's going to be one of those games that, hey, where are they at comparative to the top teams in the AFC right now? They have more talent, at least by the names on the roster, but they're starting to come around, and I don't think that I think they're still going to make the playoffs, even with 5 losses at this point in time in the season, a losing record. I mean, the Ravens have the ability to run the table and win all the rest of their games. They do. They have that type of talent on this roster. The New Orleans Saints 17-7 win over the Carolina Panthers for their second win of the season. Rookie Tyler Shaw, again, don't know if that's how you pronounce his last name. 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 19-27. Pretty good. Bryce Young came back. They're 5-5 at 500, and all he did was make a mistake. And then from there, it just seemed Rico Dowdle gets your only touchdown at this point in time. But we're looking at a team that really had no shot at winning any game that they were going into against a team that was 5-4, coming off some big wins. And you come out and you only allow 7 points. The inconsistency of the Panthers offense is mind-boggling as well. There are games that can go out and score against great defenses or good defenses, and even against this defense that is not terrible, you're only getting 7 points. And this was a throwaway year for the Saints. And again, they're 2-8. We're not talking like they're the next Super Bowl champions or they're going to make a run. They're going to suck the rest of the year. But they're coming up with some pretty good numbers for players that we look at and we go, probably not NFLers, probably not starters, probably not this. They've done all right. I mean, I'm surprised at all the games they've been in and then the 2 wins that they have. Not that they were going to not win a game all year. It just seemed like, hey, we're going to get blown out every single game. We're going to be this. They've been in games. So there's stuff to build on here for the Saints. Seattle, 44-22 win over the Arizona Cardinals. Oddly enough, Jacoby Brissett goes 22 of 44, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Again, he doesn't throw a lot of interceptions, doesn't make mistakes. I think if you're the Arizona Cardinals, you probably ride Jacoby Brissett through the rest of the year, especially with the news that they're probably going to move on from Kyler Murray. Now, Kyler Murray's going to get an opportunity at another NFL team, but I said at the beginning of the year, you know what, I'm going to save this also for the coach's hot seat because I'm going to go in depth in some of these teams. I'm going to go in some in-depth stuff with why I think they're going to make changes and stuff like that. Also, 44-22, the Lions beat the Washington Commanders. Washington Commanders are in free fall. Marcus Mariota didn't play bad, but they're just, Traylon Burks was your leading receiver at 58 yards, which he had just joined the team, a week ago. And then Jared Goff played really well. Jahmyr Gibbs over 140 yards rushing. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 5 receptions. James Williams, 119 yards receiving. They look like they're just kind of on cruise control on this. And the Commanders are going to be, they're 3-7. Their season is probably done. It's if you bring back Jaden Daniels the rest of the year, which if I was them, I would say no. Let's just see who can step up in what games and stuff like that. Marcus Mariota is a serviceable backup quarterback, and probably one of the better backups that are in the league. You're playing a tough schedule at this point, and your injuries have not done you any favors. I think you still have to. I realize they like Krosky Merritt. He was the 7th round draft pick. Their run game is non-existent. And now you're expecting Marcus Mariota to kind of carry the offense. It's one of those things that just seems the 2-2 don't make 4 for this team. And there are players that played well last year or players they brought in for this year that just have not lived up. And that's kind of where you're at. 22-26, the Rams are looking fairly good. They're 7-2. They beat the San Francisco 49ers, who were 6-4. Again, Mac Jones didn't play bad. Did not play bad in this game. It's just the Los Angeles Rams are very good. They went into halftime 21-7 and just kind of kept pace the rest of the way. They didn't really need to stress themselves out the rest of the game. They put up pretty much the same amount of points, actually 2 more than the San Francisco 49ers in the second half, but kind of matched them from there. Your Sunday night football game was the Chargers moving to 7-3 at 25-10 win over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, the inconsistency, which is the word of the week, with the Steelers is confusing at best. Aaron Rodgers, subpar game for him. Pretty decent running game from Jaylen Warren. But the Kimmy Vidal and Jarrett Patterson and Justin Herbert all played fairly well to keep this win. It was 3-2 after the first quarter, so you had yourselves what looked like a scoregami, which there were 2 this week, a score that was going to come up. So I'm keeping my eye on the Chargers the rest of the way. If they can start getting the running game back, if they can start getting some players back or getting more consistent, Justin Herbert has the ability to carry a game. We just haven't seen that consistently. Wow, I said it again. So, but he can do it. Can he do it in a playoff setting? The run game needs to help him out. It's shouldering the load of, hey, I have to win this for my team. He's done it so few and far between that I'm worried with the Chargers in the playoffs with that. But I'm keeping my eye on them right now because I think as long as Vidal can continue to do that and they can bring back maybe Hampton, I don't know what his injury status is. I know he's been out for a while. He's on IR. I believe he's designated to return. So we'll see what happens. And then an absolute stinker of a Monday night football game, 10-7 Eagles. I like defensive games. I do. I don't want people to think I don't. I actually enjoy those a lot more because everything matters a little bit more. Every turnover means a little bit more. When you're just gunslinging, it just shows that it's just easy to do. Defensive stands or great pitching where it's 0-0 in like the 7th inning in baseball or 0-0 going into overtime in playoff hockey, like everything gets ratcheted up just another notch, But 10-7, the Eagles are 7-2. They come out. The Packers' offense is a little worrisome. Jordan Love did not have a good game. They've shown that they can have low-scoring games a lot this season. Their defense looks great. Micah Parsons, the addition of Micah Parsons and everybody on that defense, Quay Walker, Edrin Cooper, Javon Bullard, players like that Rashawn Gary, they're all playing really, really well. So keeping another team off the scoreboard is pretty easy for them. The problem has been scoring. So we'll see what they got to figure out something in Green Bay with that offense. With that, let's go into that coach's hot seat because we're over halfway through this season. We have 2 openings right now. As I mentioned, the New York Giants fired Brian Dabolls, and the Tennessee Titans had already fired their head coach. So there's 2 openings right now. I think the Giants made a mistake in the sense that Dart and Dabolls seem to have something kind of moving in the right direction. Dabolls moved to Jackson Dart fairly early, which I think was a bid to save his job. You lose Dart now to a concussion. You lose Cam Scatterbro to that ankle injury a couple weeks ago. Your team's not really going to go much different than what it has been. You'll probably steal a few games here and there, but you beat the Eagles one week. You're 2-8. I understand it doesn't look good. But I think Brian Dabolls had them moving in the right direction with Dart learning week to week, and they've now blown that up. They're going to keep their GM, Joe Schoen, in place. The thing that doesn't do him any favors is that Hard Knocks season where it shows him not re-signing Saquon Barkley and deciding to give Daniel Jones all that money. Now we can see what Daniel Jones is, and it just means the team was built poorly around Daniel Jones, which the Giants have been built poorly a lot over the recent history. But I think they wanted to get a jump on finding a new head coach. And the name that I have, or at least I've seen floated out there quite a bit, is probably not going to surprise people, but it's questionable at this point in time in the NFL. But taking a look at the AFC East, the Patriots aren't going to get rid of Vrabel. We don't have to visit on that. The Buffalo Bills at 6-3. if they don't make a deep run in the playoffs or at least get to the Super Bowl, I think we're talking about a new head coach in Buffalo. I think we're at a point where Sean McDermott has proven kind of what he is, and he can get a lot out of a little, somewhat. But they've run into the Chiefs every single year in the playoffs, or at least 4 times in the playoffs, and they've lost every single time. We're seeing this offense sputter, and Joe Brady was one of those up-and-coming coordinators. He was at LSU when Joe Burrow was doing his thing. He's been a few different places as far as an offensive coordinator and stuff like that. I mean, he has one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL in Josh Allen, and they just don't seem to be able to put it together. Josh Allen and his wide receivers don't look like they're even in the same book, let alone the same page. I don't know what the problem is there. I don't know. Their run defense is terrible. Now, Ed Oliver is out. There's other defensive tackles that are out. The defensive line has been decimated. It's not an excuse that I like to use all the time with injuries, but, I mean, there are quite a few. I mean, there's no real replacement for an Ed Oliver, unless Aaron Donald's coming out of retirement or something like that. So it's a lot. I get it, but I don't think he's going to be able to lean on these injuries. I don't think he's going to be able to lean on, for as high as expectations have been, at some point in time, ownership has to make a move. So I think Buffalo could very well be, I'm going to write it down so that way I can revisit this at the end of the segment, but I think Buffalo could have a coach vacancy. Get the other 2 down as well. The Miami Dolphins, they're changing their head coach. Big win this weekend. Big win. It shows the team is still fighting and competing, but Mike McDaniel, I think he's done. I think teams will take flyers on him on offensive coordinator and everything else like that. I think he'll have another job at the end of this year. It won't be a head coaching job. He'll go back to worrying about an offense, and he'll go back to impressing people with that. And I think he'll get another opportunity when he's, I'm going to use quotations, grown up a bit. I think he's still one of those coaches that players don't respect because he seems to be kind of jokey and everything else like that. I don't think he can come in and command a room. And I don't know him. It's just the vibe he gives off and the things that he says in press conferences and the way he seems to be, all that stuff. And again, I just think the Dolphins are going to make a change. They've already made a change in general manager. A new general manager generally means they're going to bring in their guy to be the head coach. So I think the writing's on the wall for Mike McDaniel. And I think we've known that for a while. The Jets are not going to go away from Aaron Glenn after 1 year. As bad as they've been, they've obviously gone into total rebuild mode, but 2 straight wins for the New York Jets going into a Thursday night game against the Patriots. Again, I don't think it's going to change the fortunes of their season. I just think they're fighting for him. I think the players that are on this roster respect Aaron Glenn. They've been fighting the last 2 weeks. They've put together back-to-back wins, whether they were pretty or not. I just think, I think there's more upside to Aaron Glenn as a head coach. And again, we've seen coaches get fired after 1 year, but they're going in the right direction. Whereas kind of the Patriots under Mayo started with a win against the Cincinnati Bengals and then totally blew it the rest of the season, had 4 wins, and then blew getting the number 1 overall pick, in which I think they probably could have used. Now, I like Will Campbell at 4. I think he's been playing very well. But you're telling me that, Travis Hunter on this team doesn't at least cover needs on this team in the wide receiver room and the defensive back room? Again, I'm not complaining how it shaked out. I think you put out Joe Milton out there, and Joe Milton's not going to go out there and go, hey, you have to lose. Joe Milton was the 3rd string quarterback, and he was, put out against the backups for the Buffalo Bills, and he played very, very well. I mean, you got a better draft pick out of it. Again, I'm not angry how it shook out. But that's the difference between like an Aaron Glenn and a Gerard Mayo. They just weren't fighting, really, for Gerard Mayo. AFC North, the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike Tomlin, I think there needs to be a change. I think we're in the stagnant area. But they're in first place. Mike Tomlin has won Super Bowls. I think he's earned the right to kind of be able to, call his own shots, whether he wants to stay or not. But I think there needs to be a change there. I think we're working. He's the longest tenured head coach right now, and they're just stagnant. They're going to go 10-7, 9-8, and I think the Baltimore Ravens are going to pass them. I don't even think they're going to win the division. So that's kind of where we're at with that. The Baltimore Ravens are not going to get rid of Harbaugh. Not going to happen. It's just he still commands the room. He still coaches his ass off every week. Injuries have been the biggest thing for the Ravens this year, and they're starting to come back, so we're starting to see all those different changes. Now, they went out and made some moves to get some guys to help them get back on track. And do I think they're a team that I don't want to face in the playoffs? Because the record is not going to reflect the talent that they have on the roster. I thought they had the best roster going into the season, and with everything that has kind of happened, but they've won 3 in a row. They're only a -6 point differential. So it's not like they're getting blown out all these different wins or not able to blow somebody out. But that's what it is. The bottom 2 teams of this division, I think, may be coaching changes. The Cincinnati Bengals, injuries to Joe Burrow, totally understand. I don't know what happened to my pen here. I think it's the fact that I have to throw out a pen is devastating to me, but I have so many here that it's ridiculous. Of course, that one doesn't work either. I think the Bengals have invested so much and had so many opportunities to improve their team, especially defensively, because the past 2 years their defense has been horrific on like historic scales of how bad this defense has been. You're -84 point differential, and you have this high octane offense without Joe Burrow. Granted, you bring in Joe Flacco, who has played very well against some teams, and then having to try to keep up with how bad the defense has been, he's just not that quarterback anymore. So I think Zach Taylor's firmly on this hot seat right now. Why would he not be? You want to tell me again they're going to have to go get a defensive coordinator? Oh, we're going to invest in the defense. Oh, we're going to do this. We're going to go draft guys because we pay all this money for all these weapons on the offense. I get that you have to stay within a cap. You decided to pay Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, all those guys. I get it. Those guys need to be paid. But you have found nothing to help this defense. And it's only by the grace of the Cleveland Browns that you're not in last place of this division. But the Cleveland Browns drafted very well this year. But Kevin Stefanski, if you're going to make a move with him, it should be now, where Dylan Gabriel hasn't totally played a full season, but he's learning through all this. But I think with the players that they've kind of put in place and the GM, I think they're going to trust him for another year. I'm not going to write Cleveland down. I wouldn't be surprised if Kevin Stefanski was fired. I'm just not going to write it down because I don't personally think the GM, who, again, had a great draft, has put some pieces in place, and has a guy that probably still carries a huge value in Shedeur Sanders, a team's going to overpay for him at some point. You would assume if Dylan Gabriel's going to be your guy, someone's going to overpay for Shedeur Sanders. So addressing the needs that you can. Again, you have a defensive tackle that has played really well, a linebacker that's played really well. Your Quinshon Judkins, your running back, has played incredibly well. Dylan Gabriel has played serviceable minutes, having come in to replace Joe Flacco. So, I mean, as I've mentioned this a couple weeks in a row, they have pieces in place now. This is one thing we have not seen Cleveland do. So I think they're probably going to give Stefanski another year to see what happens. But I would not be surprised if he was fired. AFC South, the Indianapolis Colts are not going to fire their head coach. Jacksonville Jaguars with Liam Cohen, they're not going to fire him. Obviously, a bad loss this past week against the Texans, a division rival. But I don't think he's going anywhere. Houston Texans are an interesting one. I don't think DeMarco Ryans is in danger. They're 4-5 right now. They have a plus 54 point differential. Their defense has given up 150 points, and that's it. The offense has sputtered, and that comes from C.J. Stroud. What is going on with C.J. Stroud? We went through a sophomore slump last year. We said, hey, we got to get you out of this, and he hasn't. They have not turned him around. Not to the ability that we know he can play. So, but I don't think that the coaching staff's going anywhere for the Texans. Titans have already fired their head coach. The Denver Broncos 8-2, not going to get rid of Sean Payton. Chargers not going to get rid of John Harbaugh. Or Jim Harbaugh, sorry. Whatever Harbaugh it is. There's a Harbaugh as a head coach. That's all you need. Not going to address that. Chiefs, I don't think we're no reason to address that. The Raiders are 2-7. I think a lot of the main problem is Geno Smith and not the inability to really throw the football whatsoever at this point in his career. I think at this point you throw out Kenny Pickett and you try to see what you have. Again, not a great option, but that's your option right now. Geno Smith is not the answer. And I think Pete Carroll understands that. They're not going to get rid of Pete Carroll. And again, the Raiders are one of these teams that always try to do this 1 year and let's get him out of here and just get a better name. I think Pete Carroll is pretty safe. It's just they have to address the quarterback and let him go get a new guy, his new Geno that played really well in Seattle with him. So that's what I think. I think the AFC West as a whole is probably not changing head coaches. NFC, the East, Eagles not replacing head coach. Schottenheimer, I think, is fine in Dallas. The problem in Dallas is Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones is 80, 81, 82, whatever age he is at this point. He mortgaged a huge future for a team that's going nowhere. And we addressed that with the NFL trade deadline. Nowhere. And if he puts any blame on Brian Schottenheimer for this, he is more delusional than I thought he was. They're 3-5-1. They've lost 2 in a row. The guys they brought in, Logan Wilson will have 100 tackles a year. That's the way he's always been. Now, he came from the Bengals defense, which was shit, and is still shit. So what that trade does, other than give you a tackling machine in the middle of the field, which, again, would hopefully help your defense. And then Quentin Williams is on a very down year from the New York Jets, and you gave up a ton for him. Now, the price you paid would have been double or more if he was having a great year. Totally understand that. But you gave up a lot for a guy that has not produced very well. Now, different system brings different things out of people and stuff like that. He could be what we expect him to be again. We don't know. But the Dallas Cowboys don't have a lot of draft capital for the future. If they do nothing for the rest of this year, which it looks like they're going to do, they're in a lot of trouble over the next 2 years. So, whereas Brian Schottenheimer is not getting fired at the end of this season, at least to my, and again, Dallas is one of those teams that will have a guy for a year and go, no, we don't like you, bye. I don't think that's the case this time. I think he sticks around for another year. But next year may be a different story, especially if Jerry Jones is still going to pull the same crap that he pulls every year. And, we're the best team. We made the best moves. It just didn't work out. Oh, this, that, and the third. Oh, it's just the head coach. Just that. You should have stuck with Mike McCarthy in my. Now, I don't think your defense would have been any better. Whatever. The Cowboys are doomed for the next 3 years, is my prediction. And again, I'm not going out on a limb on that one. Commanders 3-7. Dan Quinn's probably safe for the rest of this year. You've had a lot of players not produce who you thought were going to produce. You made trades for some people that are they're not doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. The offensive line still doesn't look great. You can tell by Jane Daniels being out multiple times this year. Your secondary has been crap. Marshawn Lattimore was your best cornerback, and he tore his ACL. And he wasn't even that good. He hasn't been that good all year. So I think Dan Quinn's still safe. I think they still resonate with him. I think he still has the locker room and everything else like that. The New York Giants, again, I don't necessarily agree with this move. I think it's a messy move. I think it's something that you were working in the right direction. I think you probably still could have given him at least half of next year. But Brian Dabolls gone. He's going to go get an offensive coordinator job somewhere else. A lot of people are saying in Buffalo, working under Sean McDermott again. With Josh Allen, I think he would do very well. But they're backing Joe Brady for right now. The name that's been thrown out there quite a bit is Brian. I almost said Brian Billick. Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick hasn't had the greatest of times at the University of North Carolina. They're 4-5. They've won a couple in a row. He and Jordan are at the front of every gossip news story and everything else that I could not care less on this podcast about. But we're looking at a guy who won his first few Super Bowls with the Giants as their defensive coordinator, had some of the greatest defenses and some of the greatest defensive players we've ever seen on that team, obviously under Bill Parcells. And then from there, went to the Jets, obviously coached the Patriots, won many Super Bowls that way. Not as amicable of a breakup as we thought it was out of New England, but he's at the University of North Carolina. I think they'll probably entertain the fact. And I think Bill Belichick will jump at the chance. He wants to break the all-time wins record. He can do that. He's going to have a quarterback that has come in and has proven that he can start and has improved since his first start. Still makes some mistakes as a young kid. Maybe not destined to be the greatest quarterback of all time, but I said at the beginning of the year, I thought he was going to be their best option towards the end of the year, and that's been the case. So there are pieces in place. And for him to revive a New York Giants storied franchise would just write another chapter for Bill Belichick. I'm almost certain this will be the move. The Mara family respects him. He respects the Mara family. I think if they hadn't kept Brian Daboll this past year, I think he would have gone there this year. The question is the NFL as we see it today still Bill Belichick's bread and butter? I don't think he resonates with young players anymore. And it's tough for me to say because I love the man. He's brought championships to my team that I never thought I would see win Super Bowls. I will never say a bad thing about him, but today's players are not Teddy Bruschi. They're not Richard Seymour. They're not Lawyer Malloy. They're not those players anymore. There's very few of those who are willing to. Troy Brown, Julian Edelman, Tom Brady, these types of players, a lot of these players now don't resonate with making those sacrifices. There's still some that do. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not saying that players wouldn't do this, but there's a lot that won't. So if he's able to do that with the younger superstars and everything else like that, now he can go into a New York Jets organization and get all of the veterans that want to win. That's not a problem. I don't think that'll ever be a problem for him. Players that want to win a Super Bowl will definitely go work or go play for Bill Belichick. It's the ones that he drafts and the reaches that he makes in those drafts and thinking that he can coach up players that don't necessarily have talent in certain things. And for a long time, it was Bill Belichick doesn't go after a guy for the things he can't do. He goes for them for what he can do, and he makes it work in a system. It was difficult the last few years with the Patriots, trying to work it that way. You would go for guys like Keon White was supposed to be a first-round draft pick. He had to be talked out of Keon White. And Keon White played fairly well while he was here. He wasn't necessarily the greatest defensive end or edge rusher or anything else like that. But with the fact that you just traded him for a sixth-round draft pick, it wasn't. Cole Strange is another one. Cole Strange was the other guy. I remember talking to my father when Cole Strange was picked, and I said, hey, we just drafted a guy that's going to be the quietest 10-year starter for this offensive line like a Logan Mankins, and he wasn't even close. So that's my question, is if Bill Belichick can resonate with those types of players now and still overlook certain aspects. Because obviously he'd go after players that had character flaws, and he would coach them and put them around good players. Corey Dillon, and I mean, he tried to do it with Aaron Hernandez, and we all saw how that worked out. Again, not going to get into all of that stuff, but, you know, he's done it for quite a few different types of people. Rodney Harrison had character issues. And he came in here, and Bill Belichick is Bill Belichick, I'm going to listen to him. So that's the early favorite for the New York Giants. Do I think with the kind of media circus he brings with Jordan and everything else, there'll be hesitations? Of course there will be. But at the NFL level, with the roster you have in place and the turnover that he can bring in, it would be wrong of the Giants to not at least attempt to look at it. Atlanta looked at it before they hired Raheem Morris. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing at this point, who knows? But Detroit Lions not going to fire Dan Campbell. Ben Johnson not going to go anywhere with the Chicago Bears. Floor not going to go anywhere with the Packers. And I don't think the Vikings are going to get rid of Kevin O'Connell. I think this is going to be kind of a weird year for them. I think he's shown that he is still a quarterback whisperer to an extent. I think J.J. McCarthy needs to grow still. I don't foresee there being any changes. So I think the whole NFC North is nothing's going to change. Bucks, not going to change their head coach. Panthers, I still think he's got another year to him. He wasn't the most exciting hire. And Bryce Young has not been great. He has shown some signs of hope, but I think they're probably going to move on from Bryce Young, or at least look at. And they're 5-5, so they have improved. It's just, I don't think it's been enough. But I don't think they're changing the head coach. The Falcons, I think the Falcons are going to probably do something with Raheem Morris. I don't think he's come in and really captured anything. I don't think he's the best to help develop Michael Penix. I almost said Kyle Penix. Michael Penix Jr. I think the Falcons need to make that move. I'm going to put a question mark after this one because I don't necessarily think he's the problem there. They've lost 4 in a row. There have been mistakes that have been made. He has complained about losing, even against the Patriots. And again, I've gotten into that last week. Wasn't very happy with that. I'm still not happy with it. If it were me and I were Arthur Blank, I would probably start looking. I just don't think he's the guy to take that roster as constructed to be a Super Bowl contender. Obviously, rosters change year to year, but if you're going to bring in somebody, and again, with Michael Penix being young and not necessarily going through the greatest of offensive schemes or anything else like that, this may be the time to do so. So again, Raheem Morris is kind of on the hot seat. Could go either way. Saints are not going to get rid of their head coach. I got to remember, he was Kellen Moore. There we go. Almost had to look it up again. Kellen Moore, I think he's safe. 1 year in, the real kind of curveball of Derek Carr having to retire was, hey, you're going to go into it. We know this first year is going to be what it is. Let's see what you can do with a little bit. And again, for the close games that they've had, they have a point differential of minus 95. So again, they've been blowouts, but they've shown a lot of resiliency through this. And the New Orleans Saints have always done that. So I think Kellen Moore's safe for that after 1 year. Seattle Seahawks, McDonald is not going anywhere. The Rams, don't have to talk about them. 49ers, Kyle Shanahan's safe. And here's kind of, and I'm not going to take a victory lap yet, because I think there are different factors to this. But at the beginning of the year, I told you I got my first kind of hate take, where somebody came, and left a message saying, the Cardinals have done nothing but improve over the last couple of years. Jonathan Gannon's going to have his job. I don't think you're that sure of that anymore. They have a minus 13 point differential, which means they've been in every game. Will not deny that. They've showed fight. Where I thought that he was going to lose the locker room, I don't think he has. I just don't think the results are there to really solidify him of definitely coming back as the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. But, and my mother always used to tell me, nothing before the word but counts. So, but with the decision, or what looks like the decision to get rid of Kyler Murray, they're probably going to allow Jonathan Gannon to go get the quarterback he wants and he can develop. That is what I think is going to happen. I'm almost positive. But if you were going to make that move and do it all over again, hey, get rid of the quarterback, let's bring in a head coach and let the head coach pick his own guy. The only reason they wouldn't get rid of Jonathan Gannon is to not have to owe him the rest of the salary. I still think there's fight in that locker room. I still think they see it with him. I've never been a big fan of Gannon and the hire of Gannon, just simply because he just seems to, the yelling in a player's face, that, and I get the mistakes. I get it. You are a $1 million athlete. You're dropping the ball at the 1 yard line. You should have somebody in your face telling you what an idiot you are. And no such less words, or insert whatever other words you want here. But I think if you're going to totally redo it, it would be the best time to start anew. I believe, I'm going to look it up real quick, the Arizona Cardinals general manager, because I don't think it's the same guy anymore. Yeah. It's Monty Osenfort, who I believe was the Titans director of player personnel. I'm trying to see who they replaced. He was also, Osenfort was also part of the Patriots organization for a long time, 15 years or something like that. He's Steve Keim's successor. Oh, Steve Keim, All or Nothing, which is a great show that Amazon has for a lot of different teams and stuff like that. It was the first one that I think they came out with. That was when like Carson Palmer was in as their quarterback. That's how long ago, we're talking about the Cardinals looking really good. But they bring in Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray then they've now decided. So I think they're going to allow Jonathan Gannon to go get his guy and give him a year with that guy. And we'll see what happens from there. That's the prediction that I'm actually going to make. But I would not be surprised if he is fired and they start a complete new, with Osenfort being able to name the head coach that he wants and everything else. I'm going to just double check that I'm not an idiot and that Osenfort hired Jonathan Gannon. I don't think he did, but I'm going to double check. Because Jonathan Gannon's a defensive guy. So, I mean, for all that and being part of the Eagles organization, and everything else. I just think, did Steve Keim, just want to double check. I just want to make sure. So, no. So, Austin Ford actually hired Jonathan Gannon. So, I'm going to take back a little bit of that. Let's rewind it a little bit. So, Steve Keim left or departed. They brought in Austin Ford. They brought in Jonathan Gannon. And then Steve Keim had all the negative things to say about him. So, I do remember some of that. But I think they're going to allow him to pick his guy. So let's just see how that turns out. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if the Arizona Cardinals changed quarterback. I have not wavered on that, especially with the way the NFC West is. You have Seattle, who's playing excellent. You have the Rams, who are playing excellent. The 49ers are still in this, having to use Mac Jones for most of the year. And then, again, you've been in every game as the Cardinals. It's just not good enough. So with my list here, the question mark teams, I have 5 question mark teams, and these are the teams that I think that are definitely they could make a move at quarterback, at head coach. The Bills, the Steelers, the Bengals, the Falcons, and the Cardinals. I think they could go one way or the other. I see reasons to keep their current head coach, but think that if there's going to be a shakeup in everything else, these are the 5 teams that are probably looking at it. And again, a lot can happen in the next 7 weeks or 8 weeks, whatever it is. The Giants have already fired their head coach. I think Bill Belichick is going to be the first name on that. And then the Titans have also made a change, firing Brian Callahan. The interim coach is Mike McCoy. Mike Kafka was named the interim coach for the New York Giants. And he's been an okay offensive coordinator. I think you're keeping him in place because, again, he seems to have he's an offensive-minded guy. He's worked with Jackson Dart. Why shake it up all that much? Mike Kafka is going to run the same offense. And then I think the other real change is the Dolphins. I think Mike McDaniel's done. So that one I'm almost guaranteeing. I'd put a question mark after that one, but I think that one's pretty solidified. I think we know that. So those are the changes that I foresee in these coaching staffs. Looking at Major League Baseball really quick. So Major League Baseball has a little bit of a problem here because Emmanuel Chase and Ortiz, I can't see his name here, Luis Ortiz, both pitchers for the Cleveland Guardians, have made a ton of money pitching in Major League Baseball. And yet they're in a indictment and been arrested for gambling and fixing gambling. And it's mainly first pitch balls. And some of them aren't even close. And someone made a whole edit of all the first pitches that Emmanuel Chase did throughout the year. And not a lot of them are strikes. And some of them are downright nowhere close. They essentially are risking their careers for about $2,000 payoffs, which is ridiculous. And this is where sports gambling is going to run into its issues, is when there are little things like this. And people are going to always point to things and go, well, look at that, look at that. And the thing that sucks is if you had a really bad game, people are going to look at it and go, well, see, a bad game there. Oh, yeah, did that. I'm a West Ham fan. And they the FA had looked at Luis Paquetá, the Brazilian midfielder for West Ham, over yellow cards. And some of them were, he looked like he just wasn't trying to get the ball. He was just trying to cause a foul. Turned out that he wasn't at fault. They did all the investigations and stuff like that. They looked at betting patterns. And then Major League Baseball and now sportsbooks are going to limit betting on pitching, on particular pitches, which I think is probably for the best. But that's what's going on in Major League Baseball with that. So there's a bail for Luis Ortiz is at $500,000. And then, like I said, Major League Baseball and sports agreed to limit on pitch bets. So I think that's probably for the best. Obviously, these sports books want to make money any way they can. And if people will bet on pitch-by-pitch things, they're going to make money more times than not on that. Because people are always looking for the wins. But, I mean, the lines and the money lines and then the spreads are probably where you should probably keep it for a while. But that's just me. 2 Rookie of the Year awards were given out yesterday. The A's first baseman, Nick Kurtz, was unanimous choice for the American League Rookie of the Year. He was the one that hit 4 home runs in one game. He ended up having 36 home runs and 86 RBIs this year, batting almost 300. And then Drake Baldwin 247, 19 home runs, 80 RBIs for the catcher from the Atlanta Braves, who had a down year. But, I mean, really nice to see Drake Baldwin, especially at the catcher position, play very, very well. So those awards were given out yesterday. There'll be some more awards coming up, and we'll get into them in the next show. In the NBA, the Mavs have fired Nico Harrison amid fan angst. Why is there fan angst? Nico Harrison is the guy that traded Luka Doncic to the Lakers, and then they got the first pick overall, and then everything seemed to be fine, and then Cooper Flagg has struggled. Now, he had his best game of the year last night, and they were still fire Nico Chance. And I believe the Mavs are 3-8 now through 11 games this season. I think as the organization, you just had to. I mean, the fans hated the fact that Nico was still the GM of this team. And they weren't just going to fire him by the end of the year and stuff like that. I think they were going to give him the opportunity. They went out and got the obvious number 1 overall pick, and they just haven't panned out. But Michael Finley, Mavs legend, assistant general manager Michael Finley, and Matt Riccardi have been promoted to the head of the basketball operations to see if they can turn stuff around. But the trade of Luka Doncic to the Lakers will go down as one of the worst trades there was, especially even after the fact they got the number 1 overall pick. The fact that Dallas only got Anthony Davis and Max Christie and a 2029 first-round draft pick for Luka Doncic is criminal. Max Christie's having a pretty decent year at 13 points a game. Anthony Davis is at 20, but I mean, he's 32 at this point, and he's a game-time decision pretty much every game. So, I mean, you brought an injury-prone guy. Basically, Nico's whole thing, and he didn't come out and say it, is that Luka was in such bad shape, he wasn't listening to advice and stuff like that. We had to move on from him and everything else. Dumb. It's still a dumb move. Luka is 26 years old, and he looks in the best shape of his life, and he's averaging nearly 38 points a game. And he's on the Lakers, which irritates the crap out of me because as a Celtics fan, I have to hate the Lakers. But it is what it is. But that move has been made, so we don't have to worry about Nico. He's going to work in a front office. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, but it'll be a while before he's a GM again. And there's always somebody to blame in these types of moves. And it's not necessarily the most fair, but somebody has to be blamed for that. And it falls on Nico Harrison's desk that he's cleared out. But that's the episode we have for you today. We'll go over Week 11, probably the results of that, of Week 11. We'll go over some other news and stuff like that. We'll go over all the other awards in Major League Baseball. We'll take a look at who's the MVPs and stuff like that. I still hope it's Cal Raleigh. I thought Cal Raleigh really kind of brought the Mariners to where they were, which was almost a World Series bid. But we'll go over all that stuff. And then we'll take a look at some of the moves that we think could be made in Major League Baseball as well. And then any other sports news that comes up. Generally how it works around here is I read this stuff and then I filter it to you. All right. Anything you guys need, any comments, questions, concerns, you can go to www.loftsidebanter.com. That's loftsidebanter.com. Or sorry. Well, you can go there too. But it's loftsidebanter@gmail.com is where you can go to send the emails and stuff like that. You can get there from the website as well. Don't think you can't. But thank you, everybody, for the support still. We're getting some pretty good views over the last couple of weeks. I really appreciate it. So we'll see you on the next show.